Hello everyone, Maleficent Mistress of Evil is terrible, let's talk about it. First things first, I'll give my thoughts on the first movie. When I first watched it, I thought it was pretty decent, but over time I've grown to hate it more and more. I just really don't like the decision of them making Maleficent an Elphaba type character where they tried turning a villain into a sympathetic individual. Maleficent's villainous nature is what made her so charming. They just took that away. Although I give it credit for trying something different. That's something these films should strive for. But if it completely misses the point of what made something so enjoyable, then that's an issue. However, they still had a chance to maybe come up with something interesting for the sequel. Unfortunately, this came out in the year when Disney wasn't exactly at the top of their game. The live-action remakes aren't some of Disney's best work, but since they keep making money, they keep coming out. Although people are already thinking about boycotting The Little Mermaid, and I'd be happy about this if it weren't for such a stupid reason.
Oh, that's not how Ariel looks. She's supposed to be white. She's not black and white.
Maleficent 2 is definitely a sequel no one asked for, but at least we finally get to see Maleficent be the actual villain we've been wanting to see. Nope. She isn't. Yeah. My biggest problem with this movie would probably have to be with the title. It's called Maleficent Mistress of Evil, but we don't get to see her do anything even remotely evil. She has an outburst at the dinner with Philip's parents, which was completely justified by the way, and she supposedly puts a curse on the king. But in order to talk about this next part, I guess I have to put a spoiler warning, even though I don't really consider it a spoiler. But just in case, here you go. During the whole outburst she has at the dinner, the king gets cursed, but it wasn't Maleficent who did it. It was actually Michelle Pfeiffer's character. Of course, since they already showed us that she had the cursed spinning wheel earlier in the film, we already know it was her doing. Yet, we have to wait through most of the film for the other characters to find out about it. This would have been more effective if the scene where Aurora discovers the lair is our first time finding out about the spinning wheel playing a major part in Michelle Pfeiffer's plan. Also, how did Michelle Pfeiffer even get the spinning wheel? I don't know. The movie never explains it. With the amount of filler they put into this movie, I'm surprised they weren't able to squeeze in some important details, but whatever. Plus, they actually suggest that they wake up the king with an act of true love. It obviously doesn't work when Michelle Pfeiffer kisses him. But Philip was standing right there! He could have done something. As shown in the first film, the curse doesn't have to be broken via romantic relationship. It could also be broken by family relationships, something they seem to have forgotten about. But hey, anything to keep the plot going, I guess. Also, not only is the whole Mistress of Evil thing misleading, but Maleficent herself doesn't have that much of a presence. She felt like a secondary character in her own movie. Her whole story with her meeting the other members of her kind is interesting, and I'll give this movie credit, it does have interesting ideas, but it isn't really focused on as much as it should have been. The Fays, as they're called, aren't given any kind of development. Chiwetel Ejiofor is completely wasted here. His character doesn't get to do anything. He's only there for exposition purposes, and what they did with him later on just really made me angry. Also, considering that they were going to war with the humans and knew very well that the humans had weapons, why didn't they just make weapons of their own? As far as performances go, they're honestly really bland, but I feel like that's mostly due to the directing. Most of the actors act with very little enthusiasm. The only performance I really liked was Michelle Pfeiffer, who plays the antagonist of the film. She does a great job with what she's given, but her character isn't very well written. She's basically just the Donald Trump of the movie. She's racist against fairies and wants to get rid of them. As a villain, she's pretty weak. But like I said, Michelle Pfeiffer tries her best, and that leads to the only good scene in the movie, the dinner scene. The interactions between the characters actually felt genuine. The intensity and awkwardness actually had me invested. Angelina Jolie and Michelle Pfeiffer made the scene an absolute highlight. It's too bad we didn't get to see more of this. Prince Philip, who has gotten plastic surgery since the last time we saw him, doesn't get to do much. He doesn't have any memorable scenes or a personality of his own. He's just there to move the plot forward. I also don't buy the relationship between him and Aurora. The two actors just don't look like they're in love. We're only supposed to believe they're in love because the script says we have to. Even the CGI doesn't look complete, and it made it hard to believe they were really in a fairy tale type place. The dialogue is also atrocious. At one point, Michelle Pfeiffer, and I'm not joking, looks to the camera and says, "This is no fairy tale." That was just way too on the nose, and the way she said it had me rolling my eyes. There's also a huge tone problem. Some scenes have immature humor that are meant to make the littlest of kids laugh, while other scenes have characters literally dying. I'm pretty sure more characters died in this movie than in Joker. The movie also relies way too heavily on cliches. Many of the things that happened during certain scenes were so predictable. They even tried to do a fake-out death at the end, which doesn't have any impact because the movie didn't do anything to earn a moment like that, and we already knew that the character wasn't gonna stay dead. I don't really have much more to say about Maleficent 2. Just from the trailers, it looked like it was gonna be bad. But I am genuinely surprised that it managed to be worse than the first one. There's quite a few plot holes, the CGI is weak, and the characters are very bland. Disney has come out with 7 big movies this year, and I've only liked 2 of them so far. It's a good thing Frozen 2 is coming out next month. If you haven't seen Maleficent 2, don't see it, and just go watch Joker again. It's a much better movie centered around a classic villain. If I had to rank the live-action Disney films this year, from best to worst it would be Aladdin, Maleficent 2, Dumbo, and The Lion King. While Maleficent 2 isn't quite as bad as Dumbo and Lion King, it's still a pretty bad movie. Maybe Mulan will be better. One can only hope.